Hello and welcome to 20 Lore Pro. We're here live today at Charlie Collectible Show's Lorcana 2K here in round 4. Today we are looking at Cory piloting Emerald Steel versus Zan piloting Emerald Steel as well. We saw Zan yesterday in the 10K tournament, and here he is again in the 2K.
Yeah, he had a close run yesterday to make the day 2 cut. He made it into the later rounds, but just didn't quite cross the finish line there. But he's got it starting out good today, along with his opponent Cory Anderson, both 3-0. And we found where all the Emerald Steel Bucky decks are. They're in the 2K in day 2. So yeah, I mean there's a lot of this Emerald Steel Bucky list today. So yeah, I mean this mirror match it's gonna be kind of similar to how even the green yellow version that we saw last round. It's if both players get their buckies out, the hands are going to get emptied very quickly, and it will very soon just turn into top deck war unless someone's able to kind of get established and run away with the game early. If someone has the Bucky Diablo start and the other person doesn't, then it's usually a pretty quick match. But we'll see as they shuffle it up here and see what kind of starts that these players have. All right, well, yeah, we're already halfway through the day here on in the 2K. It's already round 4 of 7. We missed the first couple rounds as we were finishing up the 10K top 8, and so we've got round 4 of 7. And once we get through, all 7 rounds of Swiss, we'll do that cut to top 8, and we'll go to the single elimination rounds to see who will be crowned the winner of the Charlie's Collectible Show 2K tournament. Players taking a look at their opening hands here. See on Zan Syed, he's taking a look. We got a Beast Tragic Hero, an Ursula Deceiver of All, a Diablo Devoted Herald. Throwing a few of those back. I imagine that the Diablo is going to stay in the opening hand. Tragic Beast a little too slow, not something you want to start out with. And you'll see these Emerald Steel Bucky decks usually mulligan pretty heavily to try to get that perfect setup. I mean, the strongest start in the game in Lorcana, pretty much no contest, is turn 1 Diablo, turn 2 Bucky, and immediately shift that Diablo, either singing one of those removal steel songs, maybe possibly a sudden chill, or just questing for 1 and immediately drawing extra cards while also beginning that train of Floodborns, causing your opponent to have to discard from the Buckies.
In our other feature match, we have Cruz versus No I'm Not. No I'm Not getting into the top 8 of the Charlie Collectible Show's Lorcana 10K. He had lost in the top 4 to Luca, who won the 10K tournament. And so excited to see No I'm Not able to get into this 2K tournament. We'll see how well he does here today. He's on our second feature match, and so maybe we'll take a peek over there later on after we watch some of Zan playing Cory. And we want to thank everyone so much for coming out here today to Charlie Collectible Show's Lorcana 2K. You're joined here and watching 20 Lore Pro as we're doing the stream coverage of today's tournaments. If you miss out on any of the rounds, we'll have them up early in the week for you to view at your leisure. We'll also be live next Saturday at the Game Castle, streaming their Lorcana 1K featuring the Illumateers as part of the announcing crew. Really excited to be working alongside the Illumateers next week.
So both players start here kind of mirrored each other. So Cory decided to ink one of the 1-drop Diablos and went with a 1-drop Robin Hood. And then Zan, on his side, inked the 1-drop Robin Hood and played the 1-drop Diablo. Now that may be a little foreshadowing of other cards in both players' hands, is they probably made that decision based on the shift lines that they have. So if Cory had didn't have the Shift Diablo, but has the Shift Robin Hood line, then he would go with that. And then same for Zan, he probably got the Diablo in his hand and not the Robin Hood line. So, but Cory does have the turn 2 Bucky, threatening to shift that Robin Hood champion of Sherwood into play next turn, would immediately trigger that Bucky and be able to quest for 2, be a 3/6, just commanding presence on the board. Let's see if Zan also has a 2-drop Bucky for his line here. Taking a look, making decisions. The early turns are so difficult, especially in this mirror match. And Zan actually decides to ink a Bucky and play that Ursula Deceiver, and he does get to rip that Let the Storage Rage On out of Cory's hand. And that's very interesting that he decided to go with the Bucky. He even had the Diablo shift line. So, this is take note, the masterclass here you're seeing in the Emerald Steel mirror match here, that instead of I think a lot of people would have went the Bucky line and shift with Diablo, make your opponent discard, but instead he wanted to see the song that he could take and make sure that the Diablo was going to be protected and not immediately be answered by Cory. You see that Cory did have the Shift Robin Hood line, so he will have to discard for the Bucky, but Zan has an active Diablo here, so every time Cory draws a card, Zan also gets 2 as well. See what Zan decides to do. Both players with very, very strong starts on turn 2 and 3. Zan going into his turn 3, taking a look at all of his options. You got to be really careful what you ink and what you decide to play here and commit to the board, because everything left in the hand is going to be susceptible to discard from your opponent.
This is exciting to watch, these 2 mirror matches, because it really does, I think, very well show us how to play the mirror, because we've seen so many green steel decks running around in the tournament, and even though they weren't into the top in the 10K, it's just a match. If you're playing green steel, you gotta know how to pilot against it. And so we're seeing a great player in Zan piloting this, and Cory himself 3-0 here, doing very well with this list. We're gonna get to see a really great example on how to play this matchup.
You've seen Zan there ink another Bucky. He had the option to play 1 or up to 2 Buckies this game and says, no thanks, I'm just going to go all in on the Diablo plan, while Cory continues along, doesn't really have an answer to these Diablos, but does have the Floodborn lines. So Zan's going to discard to that Bucky trigger. He gets rid of one of his champions of Sherwoods, but Cory only has maybe 1 or 2 cards left. I think it's only 1, and that's with Zan having no Buckies. So Cory's just emptying his hand already, and maybe that's just understanding of the matchup on Zan's side is like, I don't need to make them discard with Bucky. They're going to empty their hand anyway, especially if they don't have an active Diablo, just refilling their hand. So Cory's threatening to make Zan discard up to 1 card a turn from the Bucky, but now he's got 2 active Diablos, so Zan's drawing virtually 3 cards a turn. So Diablo's going to get to sing the Strength of the Raging Fire on that Jafar Dreadnought. It does deal the full 4 damage, because Zan did play that Flynn Rider, his own biggest fan, first, which is also going to be another threat. So Zan's asking a lot of questions from Cory to have to answer, and yeah, this 1 trigger a turn from Bucky is just not going to be enough.
These Diablos, like you're saying, Hal, are really going to help put Zan ahead. Just allowing him to draw two cards every time your opponent draws really just represents something that a 1 Bucky cannot handle in order to make you discard everything.
Yeah, and this Flynn Rider also is going to need an answer too. And now Zan's got a hidden cove, and so Cory's got even more problems he's going to have to deal with. Cory is currently ahead on the lore race 6-3, but that Flynn Rider is going to immediately catch Zan up and put him in the lead. Not to mention the Diablos will probably get to do something. They're going to either sing or they're just going to quest. And Zan just go ahead and empty his hand. Doesn't want to discard any cards of that Bucky. Well, he will draw 2 from the Diablo, so he'll have a couple options to look at. And then if Cory does have a Floodborn, he'll have cards in hand to discard, but he'll have 2. So it's, most likely not going to have to discard both of them. And Zan's up to 9. He's immediately taken the lore race lead.
Just the fact that Zan has so many evasive characters right now are really representing a problem here for Cory. Cory here with an Aladdin, another Floodborn, triggering that Bucky.
Yep, Zan's got the 2 cards from the Diablo, so he'll take the pick of the 2, gets to keep the best one. Yep, and still no answer to those Diablos or that Flynn Rider. Cory's still on 0 cards, so everybody's on all systems go. Flynn's going to quest for 4. Going to go 5, 6 with the Diablos, 7 with the Aladdin if he wants, maybe even up to 8 if that Ursula Deceiver feels like getting in there. And it may be worth just putting everybody in the cove, turning them all sideways, and threatening to close the game in 2 turns. Zan ink a second cove, a little bit of a diminishing returns effect. Don't need to have multiples of those in play at the same time. And he is going to go just full force. All 5 in the cove and all 5 sideways to quest. And Zan will have game next turn if Cory does not have an answer. He's already at 17 and he draws 2 more cards from those Diablos. Yep, that's a quick scoop.
Yep, Cory's seeing the writing in the sand, just seeing all those evasive characters and not having a great way to handle them or a way to handle Zan's Diablos. Just really great plays there from Zan, just those decision making in, like you were saying, how inking those Buckies, seeing just that wasn't the way to get the win here in game 1 of round 4.
Yeah, Zan literally had the perfect line that we were talking about, or at least so I thought. I hadn't thought about it, especially the mirror match like this. He had the opportunity to go do the Diablo on 1, the Bucky on 2, and shift it the Diablo on 3, but he would not have gotten to get a specific card out of Cory's hand. And since he turned 1 Diablo, he knew that Cory had that removal song in hand, so he could go the Bucky route. And then Cory gets to pick the worst card in his hand and discard it, but he has that answer ready to go for Diablo. So instead, Zan inks the Bucky, goes with the turn 2 Ursula, rips the song, and Diablo went unchecked for the entirety of the game.
That was just great to see, and really just a masterclass on how to pilot that into the play. Let's head on over to our second feature match of the day, just to see where No I'm Not and Cruzito are with their match, both piloting Ruby Amethyst. No I'm Not having placed in the top 4 for the 10K tournament yesterday and into today. We see that they're both 2-1. Here we see Cruz with the Queen's Castle. We see on No outside of the board this Madame Medusa along with a goat and a strong Sisu. Both great challengers. Cruzito using that character to sing Be King Undisputed.
And you can see here, both of these players sitting at a record of 2 match wins and 1 loss. Now, No I'm Not has taken a loss because he decided to enter the tournament late, taking a round 1 loss, and the only reason for that is because he was busy playing in the top 4 of the main event of the 10K here at Charlie's Collectible show, but didn't want to go home yet. He's like, you know what? I had a top finish for the 10K. I can still enter the 2K event, but I'll just take a round 1 loss. And he fired off 2 wins after that. And here he is in round 4 against Cruzito Gaming.
I was talking to Luca before the 2K tournament, the finals before it had finished. And he was saying that he was just ready to do that 6-hour drive back home, or else we may have been seeing Luca here in the feature matches again.
Yeah, we see here, it looks like No I'm Not's got a pretty commanding lead on this board here. He was able to answer Cruz's Queen's Castle, so just leaving him with that Merlin's Goat in play. So he's got an untouched Maui, he's got a Goat of his own, a Sisu, and a Maleficent, sitting at 15 lore. This game may be over here just next turn unless Cruz has something to answer all these threats.
Well, while these two are here playing in their first game of round 4, let's head on back over to Cory versus Zane.
And we see Zan here with a start of turn 1 Diablo. Doesn't look like Cory had anything for turn 1, just inked and passed. Zan has played an ink for the turn, played that Diablo. Cory is forced to reveal his entire hand of what he is up to, and that'll allow Zan to plan his next few turns around that.
Just this turn 1 Diablo 2 just represents such a threat when you know everything else in the deck. It's You just know that if he has that shift Diablo, especially if he's able to make a turn 2 Bucky, really strong plays. But we see turn 2 Bucky from Cory.
Yeah, and really just knowing if your opponent's going to have an answer if you do have the Diablo shift line. And I definitely see the Diablo in hand, and there's at least an Along Came Zeus that could be pitched to the side for that. But is there any other thing that Zan can play this turn to advance his board state as well? Looks like I see a Robin Hood Champion of Sherwood, but I don't think I see any 2-drops. There's a Flynn, his own biggest fan. There's I believe a Strength of the Raging Fire, but no 2-drop Ursula Deceiver, no Bucky, but that's okay. I mean, we saw the power of Diablo game 1. You know, if Cory doesn't have anything to answer it, then yeah, but if he does, it kind of sets Zan way back because he's not going to advance his board state any further here on turn 2. So it looks like he is going to go ahead and go with the shift Diablo line. Decides to pitch the Along Came Zeus. Ink that Champion of Sherwood. And he does have something for turn 2. He's got a Hidden Cove, so he's going to go ahead and move that over. So that will negate a couple answers that Cory can have to his Diablo now. Let the Storm Rage on isn't going to do it. Strength of the Raging Fire can, but Cory's still going to get 2 more characters in play before that's a viable option.
Yeah, just playing that Cove to make sure that Diablo is out of Let the Storm Rage on damage range is just such a great move here. And if you have your own Diablo on your side of the board, it can't challenge into a Coved Diablo very well, but Cory not having that right now decides to ink another Bucky and has a Ursula Deceiver of All to play. Maybe he does have that Let the Storm Rage on, and now that double damage would be enough.
Yep, so the Ursula Deceiver of All is definitely a threat. Just the lone Bucky before that wasn't going to be enough to do anything to that Cove. That Cove is sticking around for the long haul. So Zan's now going to have to plan his turn around. Well, do I have any way to get this Ursula Deceiver of All off the board? Do I have any way to rip any cards out of Cory's hand? Let's see what he's got in store for us here. And he does have a Bucky. Gonna ink another Champion of Sherwood, and everybody's in the Cove, so that Bucky's now a 2/2. Diablo, no song to play, so we're just going to quest for 1, pass it back, and we're kind of at the mercy of that Ursula Deceiver of All. But Zan will get a bonus 1 more card on Cory's draw.
There's lots of plays that Cory could do here. Having 4 ink in his inkwell, able to play and sing whatever he may want to do.
So, yep. Finds it Along Came Zeus, takes that out. Diablo's just a 3/3. Oh man, and he has something to sing with the Ursula Deceiver of All. I was thinking about it. Looks like he does have something, but I'm doing some second thoughts about it. No, just going to quest for 1. Pretty safe to quest. The Bucky can only get in for 2. Yeah, most likely there's no threat. I mean, Zan could go in with the Bucky on the Ursula and finish it off with a song, but most likely not going to want to do that at this point. Cory was still a decent amount of cards in hand. Any Floodborns are going to start forcing some of those cards into his discard. We see a Flynn, his own biggest fan. Another threat from Zan, especially once Cory's hand starts waning down. And we'll see if that Ursula Deceiver does have anything it could sing. A double song Let the Storm Rage on that Flynn would be pretty good.
And like we saw in the first game, really Flynn Rider just really able to just get ahead very quickly. We saw Cory in the first game play all of his cards out and not have that big of a hand, allowing that Flynn to get up pretty high in his lore. Here we see a Pegasus, really a 5/3, another Floodborn, triggering Bucky.
Oh, wow. And so Cory's really shredding Zan down to 0 cards here. The Pegasus triggered the Bucky. Zan got to pick 1 of 3 cards to discard, but then the Ursula Deceiver of All, it double sang a sudden show, so that's going to finish off the rest of Zan's hand. But if you notice, Cory's also on 0 cards. That Flynn is going to start questing for 4, but the Pegasus also has evasive, so actually it kind of holds the Flynn at bay. He could move it over to the Hidden Cove, and it becomes a 3/4, and that's probably what we'll see unless he just has an answer for it. He's going to go ahead and put 2 damage on it with a let the Storm Rage on. But yeah, he has the option to move that Flint over to the Hidden Cove, making it a 3-4. And so the Pegasus is no longer a good answer for it, and it can go ahead and start questing for 4. Okay, well, I like this line too. He's going to go ahead and take the Ursula Deceiver of All. Really just wants to get the board at parity. But now to note, the Pegasus has the option to trade with that Flynn.
Wow, what a, honestly, really kind of a great play. Just trying to advance your board. That way you can get an equalization of what everyone has. Trading or challenging in to that Ursula Deceiver of All, leaving it open for that Pegasus. You still have a Bucky on a Cove. You're up ahead even if they do trade. Cory, let's see what he drew into.
Robin Hood's not bad, especially in the top deck war. The Bucky did quest for 1 on Zan's side, but it being a 2-2, Cory's 1-1 Bucky didn't have the option. And Zan, top deck's the worst of the Robin Hoods. It's just the 1-1 version. So back over to Cory. See if this Robin Hood wants to start going in for 2 or wants to get into the Cove for 3. I think a two-turn clock on the Cove is the right way to go. It can cause a lot of problems if this game goes any longer. And both players low on the lore, you want to just control the board as much as possible, especially when both players are just in top deck mode.
And it looks like they're both on that 5 ink, able to play most cards, if not all, in their decks. Getting another one of the lower Robin Hoods.
Yep, another 1-drop Robin Hood for Zan. Definitely not what he wants to see. Cove is around for 1 more turn, can move it over, but with no options to quest or challenge. Cory is just going to go ahead and finish off that Cove basically for free and see what Cory top decks. That's an Aladdin. That's a little bit better than the 2-2 Outlaws there. So back to Zan, see what he can top deck. That's pretty good. It's a Flynn, his own biggest fan, so threatening to quest for 4, and Zan's already ahead by 2 lore. So Cory here, let's see what he draws, see if he can change the game state at all. It's a Pegasus. That's not bad. And with that Hidden Cove gone, that will hold the Flynn Rider at bay. So he gets to go ahead and quest out with the Aladdin and the Champion of Sherwood.
All right, every time I think that Zan has gotten just another card that he needs right here in the Flynn, we see Cory really drawing off of his top very well. The 3-3 bodied Aladdin, needing the Pegasus an answer for the Flynn, able to find it.
Yeah, and Cory's pretty much free to quest with the Pegasus, but well, Cory does find Along Came Zeus, takes out the Flint. So now the Pegasus is definitely free to quest, along with all of the larger characters on Cory's side. Still going to take a few more turns to close it out. He's getting 5 a turn, so still on about a 2-turn clock, because they eventually can turn that Ursula sideways to get that last point once he gets around 19. So Zan's going to need to find multiple answers, and with only 4 characters in play, he doesn't have any clean answers to that Champion of Sherwood, so that just really kind of stops him from being able to advance his board state. So he's going to deal 4 to it with the 2 Robin Hoods. He must possibly have found maybe a removal. He's not firing it off too quick, but the Ursula wouldn't be enough. He'd have to basically banish his entire side of the board if it's just going to be challenges, and it is a Grab Your Swords. Wow. That's a step in the right direction. That's going to get rid of the Bucky on Cory's side as well as the Champion of Sherwood, but the Ursula, the Aladdin, and the Pegasus are all sticking around. Now he has a decision to make. Does he want to throw that Ursula into the Aladdin? I think he probably will. Decides to hold back for a minute. Right, Cory with not the best top deck on his side, but he's already had a pretty good string of draws in the last few turns. Just gets the 1-drop Diablo, but he's up to 13. So Zan falling behind in the lure race quite a bit, down by 10. Gonna need to do something here. I imagine that Aladdin's gonna have to get taken out. He may have to even consider that Bucky getting into the combat zone, because he's just falling way too behind. So he's got to Strings of the Raging Fire, taking out the Pegasus. Ursula, I like this too. This works. So the Ursula will only take 1 from the opposing Ursula that already had 2 damage on it. Does he want to take out this Aladdin with the Bucky? It's a tough decision. I don't think it's wrong to do it, because Cory's already at 13, but you could wait another turn and potentially the Ursula gets to take out the Aladdin. It's a tough one. He's just going to pass it back. Cory potentially going to 15 lore this turn.
Yeah, what an interesting stance to be in. Just really both these players having to play off the top. Finally, Cory now seeing some of his 1-drops that Zan earlier was just seeing off the top. We'll see if Zan can have more of his stronger characters come into play, but Cory opts to quest here with that Diablo going up to 14, decides to save his Aladdin, that way it can't be challenged, but we see Zan coming back with his own Aladdin.
Yeah, we're just at kind of a bit of a stalemate here. It's a great draw from Cory. That's another one of those Diablos. But Cory's just so ahead in the lure race, but he decides to pump the brakes. He's not going to quest out any longer. Going to see if he can maybe get some card advantage out of that Diablo. See what Diablo has. He finds the strength of the Raging Fire, so we're back where we started.
And sometimes that's just what these Emerald Steel mirror matches become, when both of their strategies come out to be on the board, making you discard from the Buckies. It's really just who can find really the best cards at the right time off the top deck. And here's Cory with the ability to draw again off of Let the Storm Rage On.
Yep, taking out that Ursula, it's one less character that Cory's going to have to worry about. And the Aladdin's going to put him up to 15. Decides to ink an Aladdin going to 6. I could see going either way on that, because if Zan did top deck a Floodborn, the Bucky would have made him just discard it anyway. And just finds another Bucky. Yep, and so the original Bucky's going to take out that Aladdin. Cory's getting really close to closing out this game. He's got the option to go up to 17 this turn, and he finds a Beast Tragic Hero. That's going to need an immediate answer from Zan.
Wow, what a big character too, and questing for 2. Just really a strong character to be drawing right here when you're at 17 lore.
Yeah, so Zan's going to need pretty much an immediate answer. Doesn't find it. We're going to go on to a game 3.
We want to thank everyone again for joining us here today at 20 Lore Pro. We're here at Charlie's Collectible Show in Stone Mountain, Georgia for their Lorcana 2K. We got done streaming today their Lorcana 10K with the top 8. Very excited to see Luca win in the 10K finals. Congratulations to Luca. We're thankful to have everyone here today as we're allowed to stream and do coverage for this competitive event. Thank y'all for watching over on Twitch. We're going to continue on with the 7-round Lorcana 2K. Next week, 20 Lore Pro is heading to Game Castle in Austin, Texas, where we'll be live for their Lorcana 1K. We'll have announcers, possibly Hal, joining us, but for sure the Illuminateers. So we'll have more competitive Lorcana coverage for you next week.
Yeah, great. Game Castle's a great store. I've played in a couple Lorcana tournaments there. It's only a couple hour drive from DFW, not too bad. So I do my best to make it out and just talk about some more competitive Lorcana.
Well, it's just great to see these events, especially when so many of us are getting ready for challenges. We know we have the Fort Worth one, and there's one in Europe as well. So this is just a great time to be able to watch Lorcana here live on these camera streams and just try to figure out the best plays, the best lineups, and to see some great players piloting these deck lists. We want to thank our production team from behind the scenes. We have Luxac from Nexus. Nexus is a gaming venue located in Waco, Texas. Nexus offers esports, TCG and dining, and an elite gaming hangout to build your Lorcana gaming community. We want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Diamond Ink Apparel, who did the artwork for the Lorcana 10K's exclusive top 4 mats. If you didn't get a chance to see those, you can head on over to 20 Lore Pro's Twitter or X account, and you can see those pictures of those playmats there. If you're looking for any artwork or custom prints, head on over to Diamond Ink Apparel. We really want to shout out GFQ Underground and thank them so much for printing these playmats. The playmats that you see here on the screen today, live on camera, those are printed by GFQ Underground. They're located in Central Texas, but they do ship around America. If you'd like custom playmats made or any of their stock images, head on over to GFQ Underground. If you haven't heard about 20 Lore Pro and this is your first time tuning in, we want to thank you for coming. And also say that 20 Lore Pro, we have a Discord community full of Lorcana players who love to talk about deck discussions. So if you're looking for a place for new deck lists and want to talk about your latest list, head on over to 20 Lore Pro and submit your deck list for the discussion to continue. If you've missed any of today's rounds for the Lorcana 2K or the 10K, head on over to 20 Lore Pro's YouTube later on this week, where we'll have posted for you all of the rounds.
All right, here we go. Game 3, Zan Syed versus Cory Anderson in the Emerald Steel Bucky mirror match. Zan's going to start us off. He's going to ink, play that one-drop Diablo, see what Cory's up to. And if you'll notice, he does not have a quick answer to an opposing shifted Diablo. He's got Along Came Zeus. Got a Hidden Cove. He's got a Diablo of his own, but no one-drop. He's got the one-drop Robin Hood with no shift line. He's got the Pegasus. He's got the Bucky. Hand's kind of all over the place. He's going to have a strong start with a one-drop of his choice, and then he can go with the turn 2 Bucky, but none of the strong shift lines as of yet. So we'll see how that makes Zan craft his game plan in the following turns.
Diablo just really represents kind of a unique game just mechanic where you can look at your opponent's hands. We kind of had that in Sapphire, I believe, with a card that allowed you to look at your opponent's hand as a one-drop. But really in Diablo, just being a great shift target for the 3-drop. Really great to be able to see your opponent's hand and just kind of plan out your moves a little better.
Yep, so we see Zan here, ink to 2 and go with the Ursula Deceiver. He already knew he was going to get a hit, at least with the Along Came Zeus, but wants to make sure that there's no other cheap songs, but he doesn't have the Shift Diablo line. So neither player having that, just ultimate start of the Shift Diablo Bucky line, but we know Cory does have the turn 2 Bucky. And then maybe Quest with the Robin Hood, probably not safe enough, so he shifted back over to Zan Syed, and we'll see what he's got in store for turn 3.
Getting rid of that Along Came Zeus, really making sure that whatever plays you're going to do are fairly protected unless Cory draws into it. Really great lineup to go into.
All right, so Zan does have the Bucky here. It's just going to be on turn 3 instead. Ink another Ursula Deceiver. Setting up to start playing out some Floodborns on the following turn. Let's see if Cory's got a 3-drop. An Ursula Deceiver of all, so it may not be. I was going to ink that. He may just want to put his Diablo of his own into play. So he does that. Bucky's going to trigger. Zan's going to have to choose a card to put into the discard.
It's interesting with some of these lines where we could see a turn where Cory could play that shift Robin Hood and do another reshift onto the Diablo for free, discarding 2 cards from Zan. Could be an interesting line, but does require a card to discard to Diablo shift.
Yeah, Cory deciding if he wants to do anything with his Diablo and just gonna, or I guess do anything else. Yeah, maybe he's just considering what to do with the Robin Hood, but back over to Zan. Let's see what he's got for turn 4. He's got one of those Jafar Dreadnoughts or any other Floodborns to put into play, and he's got a Diablo of his own.
Not only that, but that enchanted Diablo, kind of flexing over here on that regular one.
Yeah, does the enchanted one, you draw 2 cards on your opponent's turn when it exerts, right?
That's how shiny it gets.
So Cory is forced to discard that Tragic Beast Hero. We're still a little ways from that. It's a little dangerous to keep those late drops in the Bucky mirror match. Both players have a Bucky. You just want to focus on what your next turn play is going to be. This is a very decent likelihood that you won't be able to get to 5 ink and still have your 5-drop in hand. So going to play it a little safe there. We'll see it. This would be an interesting turn to see if what Cory decides to do with his Diablo. If he doesn't have an answer to Zan's Diablo and he does decide to exert it, Zan could have something like Hidden Cove to quest into his, but in fact, actually he's the one with the Hidden Cove. So that'll make his play a little bit safer for the Diablo.
This also makes some of those grab your swords that we saw Zan have earlier able to not take out a Diablo if it's on that cove.
Yeah, Zan could still have something like Along Came Zeus. He could still have Strength of the Raging Fire, but that does negate something like Let the Storm Rage on. Zan could have a Hidden Cove of his own, so the Diablos would just trade. But that means Cory got a card out of his Diablo and Zan doesn't. It looks like Cory's just going to go ahead and commit everybody to the Cove. It's not going to be something easy for Zan to take out with this board. Even if you put all 4 of his characters into it, would only deal 5, then everything would be exposed. Would not be a great option. We see that Steel, Floodborn, Aladdin in Zan's hand. Gonna ink a second copy of Bucky as both players' hands dwindle down. It's not gonna be something that you really want to commit here. If you put a second Bucky into play, Cory's definitely just going to commit his entire hand to board as quickly as possible. But he does have a Long Came Zeus to take out Cory's Diablo, and so that means Zan's Diablo is free to do whatever it wants this turn. See if he has any songs he wants to sing with it. Maybe he wants to put some damage on the Hidden Cove, or it may just go for a lore. I imagine damage on the Hidden Cove is a little more important than just gaining 1 lore here. As again, we spoke about earlier, lore doesn't really matter in the mirror match until it starts getting up, closer to 12, 13, 14 lore. It's really all about controlling the hands, the board, and then whoever usually wins the board is the one who can quest out and just get the win eventually.
We also have a quick update for y'all from our second feature match that featured No I'm Not versus Cruzito. No I'm Not was able to get the win 2-0 over Cruz.
Yep, so Zan's going to commit pretty much everything except the Bucky to go into that Cove. So if Cory doesn't have an answer to the Diablo, it can clean up that Hidden Cove pretty much for free next turn. But we'll see what Cory's got in store. He will have some decent challenges, at least with that Robin Hood. Could cleanly take out that Ursula Deceiver if he wants. Could do the Diablo as well. Maybe it's a little scary if he's worried that Zan may just shift a second copy. It looks like he may have a Strength of the Raging Fire. That could take out the opposing Diablo pretty quickly. Oh, it's not. It's a Cricky. That looks like a Strength. Is the shiny Cricky. Fooled me.
He's got a tough decision here. Does decide. Oh, I think he was about to do a Robin Hood play. He does do the Robin Hood play, triggering Bucky.
Yep, shift that Champion of Sherwood. Zan pitches one of his own to that Bucky trigger. And then Cory is most likely going to challenge into one of these 2 characters that he can. Decides to go ahead and take out the Ursula. That will gain Cory the 2 lore, so he doesn't miss out on any lore tempo there. And then only 1 card left. Is he going to be able to do anything with that, or is he going to have to leave it vulnerable to Zan's potential Bucky trigger? Decides to pass it back. So if Zan does have another Floodborn, then he is going to get that last card out of Cory's hand, and he is the one still with the active Diablo. The Diablo should be able to freely take out that Hidden Cove, and then Cory's going to be running out of threats and board presence. And it is that win condition, the one that just run away with the game so quickly, especially when your opponent is out of cards. It's the Flynn Rider, his own biggest fan. And yep, just like he drew it up, Diablo's going to finish off the Hidden Cove. And it's still going to keep drawing him extra cards on Cory's turn.
What a Floodborn to be playing right there in that situation. Talk about the one you want to see. That Flynn Rider really representing a lot of lore here in this game.
So Cory finds a Diablo of his own. He will make Zan discard a card for his Bucky. That Robin Hood champion is going to go in for 2 lore. And so this will be interesting here. Let's see if Zan has a clean answer for the opposing Diablo. Because if he doesn't, they can kind of be in this weird stalemate on that. The Flynn could just go in for 4 lore, and Zan could decide to leave his Diablo back. But Cory's Diablo is also a little vulnerable because that Flynn could just take it out for free. So it'll be up to Zan if he wants to trade Diablos. I don't know. It's a little tricky because if Zan does want to trade Diablos, at least he gets another free card out of it. So he did have an answer. He had a Long Came Zeus, but he decided that the Robin Hood is the bigger threat. So now with that, I would just go ahead and exert the Diablo. You get to draw a card on Cory's turn, and then if Cory wants to do the trade, that's fine. He doesn't get to draw a card from his Diablo. Flynn's still threatening, gaining just massive amounts of lore every turn, and we're at the point now where this 1-drop Diablo is even free to quest.
What a powerhouse we're seeing Diablo be here. It just is representing so much card advantage. Cory's seeing that, knowing that he can't allow Zane to just draw any much more, and decides to just trade the Diablos out together.
So Cory had a Bucky for the turn, decided to just turn that into a 6th ink instead of playing a 2nd Bucky to the board. But he says still on 0 cards, so that Flynn Rider's still free to quest for 4, and then Zan has a Beast Tragic Hero, just one too many threats. This is usually about the point you see how they run away with the Emerald Steel matchup. The lore count just doesn't really matter. One player just usually amasses so many threats while they're in this top deck back and forth that they would take too many runners of cards for Cory to have answers for these, and the Beast is going to start drawing extra cards. Like, even if he draws an answer, right, which one do you pick? Do you pick Flynn? Do you pick Beast? One's drawing you 2 cards a turn, and one's questing for 4 lore.
Yeah, just seeing that right in the sand, just the 12 lore that he had, just Cory knew, and that's the game right there. That Tragic Beast really representing just more of what we had already been seeing with Diablo doing for Zan, and able to get the win here in game 3 of round 4. Congratulations to both these competitors, but especially Zan, as he was able to get the win. Hopefully we'll see him later on into the top.
Yeah, so Zan moving on to 4-0. Cory will fall to 3-1, still live to make top 8 of this event. But we will be right back. We are going to get set up for round 5, and we will be bringing you some more Lorcana action.